Have you ever looked at a piece of furniture and thought, if only it were just a little bit shorter? That's where I'm at with this IKEA Billy bookcase. Today, I'm going to perform some DIY magic and modify this Billy to perfectly fit my space and give my growing collection of movies and related collectibles the home that they deserve. And I'm going to show you how I did it step by step. So let's prepare for a satisfying transformation.
Welcome back, sir. All systems for gaming will be prepared in a few minutes. For now, feel free to grab a cup of coffee and have a good day.
This is the space that I'm working with currently. Right now, this vertical space is 76.5 inches at most in height, but the Billy bookcase is 79.5 inches in height. So I need to cut at least 3 inches off of this, but based on the video that I saw, I'm probably going to cut 4 inches off the bottom so I can reconfigure all the holes. So when I want to use the original parts, everything will still fit together. So that's going to take about 4 inches off that, which will make this piece about 75.5 inches length in height and should fit this space with just maybe an inch to spare. So I think that's going to work. Part two of this is I originally was going to modify the width of the Billy bookcase because that's the only space that I have right now. I custom built this shelf last year sometime to fit this exact space, but the Billy is wider. It's about half the size of this, so there's several inches that won't work. So the second part of this is I think I'm going to cut the extra space off the end of this desk, and this desk is from IKEA. It's one of their kitchen countertops, and it actually came with some banding that I can use, but I'm going to cut it off that end that goes against the wall, so I'm never going to see it anyway. So that's going to be part two of this video, is cutting the desk to make it just a little bit shorter so I can fit the full width of the Billy bookcase in this space. These are my tools that I'm using for this project, using the circular saw, my drill bits, obviously the measuring tape, T-square, and I'm using this as a guide for my circular saw. And then I use painter's tape. I use this on a lot of woodworking projects, but I really use it anytime I'm working with like the melamine or like the chipboard stuff that IKEA is made out of, because this will help with blowout and help keep the exterior as intact as it can be. All right, so I'm out here in my garage and I'm getting ready to do the measurements and make the initial cut. So I've decided, after measuring again and the space inside, I want to make this piece about 75 3/4 in height. That'll get me just below the height range, and it will also give me enough space to make the cut so the bottom part is completely clean with no holes left over, so then I can use the bottom part as the jig to make the new holes in the part. So the first thing I'm going to do is I will measure the piece, and I have it in here. I measure twice. Always measure twice. For me, it's probably measured like 3 or 4 times. Think about it some more, and then measure again and make the cut. And a lot of times I've still done it wrong. But we're going to go ahead and measure. So you can see I made the line, measured it 3 times. So I'm cutting just above here because the goal is I'm going to cut this bottom piece off, and then I'm going to use this bottom piece as the jig and put it here, and then re-drill all the holes so everything fits, so I can use the original parts that came with this bookcase and then just use it and then shorten the shelf a little bit. Again, I'm going to link to the video that I learned this from in the description below. All right, the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to line the part that I want to cut with this just painter's tape. This is a trick I learned. I don't even know who I learned it from. It's years old, but I've seen it on many YouTube videos since, and having tried it myself, it does work. I've cut melamine before with and without this, and it does make a difference. The painter's tape just gives it a little bit of extra protection so you don't get any blowout on one side, and keeps the exterior in about as good of a shape as you could expect. And as you'll notice, I also have this piece of wood underneath that's just another layer of, I would say, protection. A lot of times I've found that if you have a piece underneath, when the saw blade is cutting up, it doesn't tend to chip out the piece you're actually cutting as bad. So I usually use a piece underneath just to give it a little bit extra protection, and it does seem to help. And because one of these sides I'm going to see, but because they're all at the bottom, I'm not as worried about the exterior look. I want to make sure that the side that the blade is going to be cutting up through is the protected side. So I have that side face down to protect it a little bit more. So for this part, I'm just lining up my circular saw, which is not plugged in. Um, just for anybody who's a little worried that I'm going to accidentally, saw a leg off. Um, so right now I'm just lining this up to make sure my blade is lined up. So I want to get that lined up to make sure I know where I'm at. And you could probably do this if you had like a plunge saw or a track saw, but I don't have one of those. So I have this guide that I use. So I will line that up there, clamp this down, and then once I'm done, I will double and triple check to make sure it's where it needs to be. All right, after a little bit of an adjustment of this to get everything lined up, because I want to make sure the kerf of the blade, I don't want to cut too much off on this side because I don't have as much side room to play with. And obviously I wanted to make sure the guide is straight and level across this way. So I think we're all good. So now all that's left is to plug it in and make the cut. Here's my offcut, and I'll show you the result of this piece. But this is the side that you're going to see, I would say, most of, because this is the interior. So you can see between the painter's tape, just having the base there, there's no real chips. Again, I'll show you this again when I take it inside, or I'll put some more light on it to make it a little easier to see. But this really reduced the chip. I mean, it looks just about perfect. So now that I have the one offcut, I'm going to go ahead and cut the other piece. Hopefully that'll go a little bit faster. And then I'll show you how I'm going to replicate and do the holes on here. So let's get the other piece cut first. Same as before, we're gonna do the measurement 75 3/4. One thing I'm doing this time that I did not do the first time is I'm going to clamp the entire piece to the table when I'm cutting it. Not much, but I could feel the piece just ever so slightly wanting to move whenever I was cutting. So I want to make sure everything is stable and it doesn't shift any which way. Now that all the cuts have been made, the next step is to recreate the holes so I can put basically the bottom shelf and that little skirting board right here. But obviously there's no holes on the section that I just cut because I just cut it off. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to line this up just by touch to make sure everything lines up to where it would need to go. So I'll line this up, and then what I'll end up doing is I'll drill the holes to where they're supposed to go. But I need to figure out the depth, and again, I'm following the steps of that one video. According to the video, I drill holes through each of these and then measure them through the depth of the other offcut that I had. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to show you how I do it. All right, so I already figured out that the big holes here, they fit my 5/16 drill bit. So I'll be using this drill bit to drill all the way through on these. And to make sure I do that right, I'm going to be using something underneath so I can cut straight through without having to worry about it. For the smaller holes, I ended up buying a metric set of drill bits because I didn't have one anyway. These are M35s. I can put a link where I got these on Amazon below. But I'm tried the 5mm one, but that seemed just a little too tight. So I'm gonna go with the 4.8 because that seems to fit in the hole nice and snug. The other one seemed like a little bit too big, and I don't want to make the hole bigger than it already is. So I can just go ahead and drill out these two holes. All right, as you can see, I cut through, this is the original side. I cut through both sides of the melamine, so all the holes go all the way through, even though some of these can't really tell because the melamine just kind of covered it back up, but the holes go all the way through. So now I have the jig in which I can drill the new holes. But first I got to find the depth because I don't want to make sure I drill too far into the actual sideboards. The way the video shows it doing is after you drilled through the entirety of one side, you just line up the holes since they're all the same depth, and then basically stick the drill bit in until it hits the bottom of the other piece. And then again, this is a trick I've used many times before. Handy painter's tape. Once again, you basically just create a flag on your drill bit that then lets you know the depth. So when you're drilling, you know, like, all right, once I've hit the bottom of this, then you go no further. So I'm going to do that with that one, and then that's set. And then I always like to double check because you just never know. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the smaller hole. Get that to the depth. So now I have my two drill bits marked with the depth that I need to go because it needs to drill. I'm going to use the jig, so it's got to go through this piece and into the next piece, but as deep as the original is. So that's what we're doing now. So again, I'm just taking the offcut of the piece that I just cut a little bit ago, and I'm lining it up, obviously making sure it lines up at the bottom. And then I'm just doing this by touch. So I'm lining everything up to make sure it fits and that it's square. Just trying to feel the edges to make sure everything is as close as you can possibly get it because you want it straight. And then I'm going to clamp this down. And now I'm just going to drill my holes into the bottom piece. So we have the new holes all drilled. They should line up with this part, and so then it'll just be putting the new pieces back in, but we're going to do the other side first and then we'll take everything inside. can see the holes that I cut there, and then here's the back. It looks like I did almost go through a little bit on this one, but yeah, so well, I'd probably need to correct that, but it's not all the way through. And again, this is the bottom, so I'm never gonna see this. So it's really not that big a deal because it'll be up against something. So not the worst thing that could happen. So we've passed the first big test of this project in that it does fit the height of the space. You can see there's just the tiniest gap at the top where this goes, which is just about perfect. So next step of this project is just to assemble the Billy bookcase. I will focus on the new part, so I'll obviously do the bottom and put the pins and all the cam locks and everything in the bottom first. But then after that, I'm just going to do time lapse, speed through it. All right, now here's our moment of truth. I put the dowels in the skirting board already, and I already put it in the top and the bottom. I did that off camera. The next step is to put these in the appropriate holes, and then we'll start attaching the shelves and attaching this part. But because I can't help myself, I have to at least test to see how this goes and if the holes line up and everything kind of goes. And you know, the initial test fit, it looks like it's going to be all right. See another initial test. So we're going to do these ones first because these are the new holes that we drilled in the piece. And it fits. And it's in there nice and tight. I will put all the measurements of the drill bits. Like I said, I used for this one, I bought a metric set just because that's what the original video had mentioned. I thought he said about 5, but again, I think I believe it was 4.8. So that's what I used to drill these two. So I bought a metric set drill bits specifically for this project. I had that a few weeks ago, and so I'll put a link to the exact one I bought, but it's a metric set, so any metric set you have is gonna work. But I would probably make sure that at least has a 4.8. Now we're moving on to the real part of this project to see if this is even remotely going to work, and it's basically putting in the bottom shelf and the bottom skirting board and then locking everything together. It's a real moment of truth. Perfect. So the Billy went together. I mean, you watched me do it. It went together really well. There were honestly no issues at all. I'm going to close up to the bottom here so you can see this is what the new bottom of the bookcase looks like. I honestly can't tell much of a difference at all. There's no chips. There's nothing. Maybe you can see one. If you see any, let me know in the comments, or don't, because I might not want to know. That's what one edge looks like. This is what the other edge looks like. I wasn't sure this was going to come out when I started this project. I was a little worried. I am I would say I'm still a beginner woodworker. I've done a few things, but I don't get to do it regularly enough to where I feel like I've perfected the skills like riding a bike. So I was a little concerned when I was starting this project that it wasn't going to go out, that I was going to mess up one thing, it wasn't going to be level, or the other number of things that I was going to do. But it came out honestly perfectly. Obviously, I need to cut the backboard for the Billy bookcase, but that's pretty easy because I can just measure the length and I can cut that on my table saw. it's just a pretty easy cut. But part 2 of this now is going to see how much of my desk that I now have to cut to make room for the width of the Billy. I've gone ahead and cleaned everything off my desk to get ready for the cutting. But first, what I want to do is I just want to make sure I have the sizing right. I've already done some measurements based on the space that is currently there and the difference between that and the Billy bookcase. I think I just have to cut 6 7/8 off the desk, which obviously I'm cutting it off that end that goes along the wall. But what I want to do is I'm going to take the desk off here, kind of put it on the floor so I can put the Billy bookcase into the space, move the Alex drawers over, and then I think that'll give me a little bit better idea to see how on the money I am with that. So that's the next step is I'm going to take the bookcase or take the table desktop off, put it on the floor, put the Billy bookcase in, and then see where we're at. See the cut? The guide did help, but I had to manually maneuver it, so that's why I just went slow and tried to do my best. So now it's really just going to see if this is going to fit. I will tell you, it made a heck of a mess. The desk fits. It fits in there perfect. You can see it slides right up in there. There's a little bit of an overhang on either side. So now it's, honestly, I'm going to take the painter's tape off. I'm going to clean everything down a little bit and then put the desktop back on. This is what the edge of the board looks like. Honestly, not too bad. There's no chipping at all that I can tell. I mean, I can tell it is a little uneven. There's a little bit of a curve, so that's not perfect. It's par for the course. So here's what it looks like put back in the wall. Like I said, you can see there's a little bit of a gap here where I didn't cut straight. I don't know if it's coming up on camera that great, but you can see that there's a gap. It doesn't bother me enough because I just don't look at it that often to really notice. But if I step back and look at everything, obviously the TV is no longer centered, nor is the other stuff. Whether or not that bothers me over time, we'll see. I can shift the TV down if I need to. I am really happy with how this turned out. Obviously, I need to put shelves on and put the stuff in there because that was the whole point of this video is to actually be able to store more stuff. But for now, the space is complete. The desk is cut. The Billy bookcase is cut. This was a really fun project. So that puts a wrap on this video. You can see I haven't even put the shelves or anything in. That's going to be another video because, to be perfectly honest, I haven't really thought about what I want to put in here. I have an idea of some of my collectibles. Obviously, it's a space for movies, but which movies is that going to be? Am I going to move my Marvel collection to over here? Am I going to move my Disney stuff? What am I going to put here? I don't know. I'm going to take you along with that adventure for me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving a thumbs up. If you're new here, please hit subscribe. And if you want more room tour videos and DIYs, you can check out this playlist here. Everybody, have a great day. And don't forget, collect what you love.